AITA for refusing to attend my sister's no kids allowed wedding after she called me selfish. I, 32F, have always been close with my younger sister, Lily, 29F, until recently. Our relationship has taken a sharp turn over something that I still feel I have a right to stand by my principles about. I'm hoping to get some perspective because family is complicated and I'm not sure if I'm overreacting. A bit of context. I have two children, ages 6 and 3. Lily has always known this, and I have always been upfront about the fact that our family comes as a package. My kids are well-behaved for their ages, and I try to be conscientious about their presence in social settings. Lily recently got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 31M, and they are planning a fairly elaborate wedding. At first, I was excited to help her with planning, dress shopping, and all of the typical pre-wedding stuff. However, about 2 months ago, she sent out an email to all her guests that essentially stated her wedding would be an adult-only affair and that she did not want any children present. This is where the trouble started. I was taken aback because I didn't recall any discussion about this with me personally. It wasn't a blanket, no kids policy from the start, and I feel that, given the closeness of our relationship, I should have been spoken to privately. I replied politely, expressing that I understood she wanted an adult-only wedding, but that I couldn't attend without my children. I explained that it was simply impossible for me to be away from them for the day and that they are a central part of my life. Her response was short, dismissive, and, honestly, hurtful. She told me that my insistence on bringing my kids was selfish and that I was putting my own wants above her dream wedding. She mentioned that other guests had made childcare arrangements and that I should do the same. I countered, explaining that I had no family nearby who could watch the children, and paying for a babysitter for the entire day, plus travel, was financially unrealistic. I also reminded her that I had always attended all major family events with my kids, and it had never been an issue before. Lily then escalated the situation. She called me a spoiler and accused me of trying to make her wedding about my children. She sent a follow-up message saying that if I didn't respect her wishes, I wasn't welcome at all. At this point, I was hurt and frustrated. I felt cornered and like my presence at one of the most important days of her life was being leveraged against me, but under terms that I couldn't meet. I ultimately decided to decline attending the wedding. I wrote her a long, heartfelt message saying that I loved her, I wanted to celebrate with her, and that I understood her wish for an adult-only wedding. However, I could not in good conscience leave my children behind, and I hoped that we could find a compromise in the future. I mentioned that I was extremely sad to miss the event, but felt it was the only option that aligned with my family obligations. Her response was icy and final. She told me that I had made a selfish choice, and that she was disappointed I would prioritize my children over her wedding. She said she would no longer reach out to me for wedding updates, and implied that this was a permanent strain on our relationship. She also told our parents that I was being unreasonable, which caused a lot of tension at home. My parents have tried to mediate, but it's tricky. My mom thinks Lily has a point and that I could have made alternative arrangements. My dad is more understanding and says that the wedding should not come at the expense of my relationship with my kids. I understand both perspectives, but I still feel torn. I don't want to create a rift with my sister, but I also cannot compromise on being present for my children. Some friends have weighed in as well, and the responses are mixed. Some say I'm right to put my children first, and that Lily should have been more considerate of her guests. Circumstances. Others say that it's a wedding, a one-time event, and that making childcare arrangements is reasonable to respect her wishes. I've considered compromise options, like having the kids present for the ceremony, but leaving before the reception, but Lily was firm that no children would be allowed at any part of the event. I feel like I've exhausted all possibilities without violating her stated boundaries. Since declining, I've been anxious about family interactions. Family group chats have become tense, and there's a sense of guilt on my part that I am letting her down, but I also can't shake the feeling that I would be letting my children down if I chose her wedding over them. I have tried to communicate openly, but Lily seems uninterested in dialogue now, which makes me feel even more isolated. So, Reddit, here's where I stand. I chose my kids over attending my sister's wedding after she declared it strictly adult only. I am heartbroken that our relationship has deteriorated over this, and I feel like I am being painted as selfish despite my decision being guided by parental responsibility. AITA for refusing to attend her wedding? I would appreciate perspectives on whether I truly am being unreasonable or if this is simply a clash of priorities that is unavoidable. I'm trying to navigate love, duty, and family loyalty, and I'm unsure where the line is drawn. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my younger brother stay with me after he lost his job and got evicted. So, here's the situation. I, 32F, live in a 2-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city with my partner, 34M, and our cat. We've been together for 7 years and generally have a stable, comfortable life. My younger brother, Alex, 27M, has always had a rocky path. Growing up, he was a handful, never finished high school on time, got into minor legal trouble, and bounced between jobs. I've helped him before, sometimes with money, sometimes with temporary housing, but only on short-term arrangements. A few months ago, Alex called me, sounding desperate. He had been working at a retail store for about a year, but the company went under. He had savings, but apparently they were gone faster than expected due to a car repair and a medical bill. On top of that, he got evicted from his apartment. He said he had nowhere to go and begged if he could stay with us for a while, promising to pay rent as soon as he could get back on his feet. At first, I felt bad. He's family, and I've seen him struggle, but I hesitated because our apartment isn't big and we value our privacy. After thinking it over, I told him I wasn't comfortable having him move in. I explained that our apartment is small, our cat is nervous around strangers, and that bringing him in could strain our relationship if things didn't go smoothly. I also mentioned that while I wanted to help, I needed him to have a clear plan to regain independence rather than relying on us indefinitely. Alex got upset, saying I was heartless and that I should be willing to help family in need. He accused me of putting my comfort above his well-being, claiming that he had no other options and that I was essentially abandoning him. I stuck to my decision and offered to help him search for a new apartment, help with his resume, and even give a small financial gift to cover a security deposit, but I refused to let him move in. Things got tense. Our parents heard about the argument, and they called me, insisting I should just let him stay until he gets back on his feet. They brought up that when I was younger and struggling, Alex helped me emotionally through tough times, so it was only fair to return the favor. I told them I appreciated Alex's support back then, but that adult life is different. I felt like having him live with us could easily turn into months or even years of him, depending on us, and I didn't want to set that precedent. Alex didn't take it well. He stopped talking to me for 2 weeks and started posting on social media about family that doesn't care, tagging me in some posts. Some mutual friends messaged me asking why I was being so cold and unhelpful. A few of them implied that I was selfish for refusing, especially since he was genuinely in need. My partner supported my decision from the start, agreeing that our space is limited and that boundaries are important, but even he admitted it's tough to see someone you care about struggling. Now, here's where it gets more complicated. A mutual friend told me that Alex actually did find a room to rent from someone else. Apparently, it's a bit more expensive and a little further from work, but it's stable. I haven't contacted him directly about it yet because I want to give him space. I feel some relief that he's not homeless, but I also feel guilty that our disagreement caused a rift. Our parents have not stopped pushing me to make amends, suggesting I should at least let him come for dinner or spend the weekend together to mend things. I don't mind spending time with him, but I don't want to compromise the boundaries I set regarding living arrangements. I've tried explaining that to them, but they say I'm missing the point of family obligations. So now I'm left questioning myself. I feel like I did the responsible thing by not letting him move in, but at the same time, I can't shake the guilt. I genuinely don't want him to feel abandoned, and I want to maintain our relationship, but I also don't want to risk my home environment, my relationship with my partner, and our cat's well-being. I also worry that if I had said yes, even with good intentions, it might have led to tension, arguments, or resentment later on. AITA for refusing to let my brother stay with me, even though he was in a difficult situation, and instead offering support in other ways. Or should family obligations always come first, even at the expense of personal comfort and boundaries? AITA for refusing to financially support my adult daughter's wedding even though she says I'm the only parent she trusts. I, 48F, have always been very independent financially. I own a modest home, have a stable career as a project manager, and have been careful with savings and investments. I am divorced, and my ex-husband, Mark, 50M, has been inconsistent in supporting our family since our divorce 15 years ago. We have a daughter, Sophie, 27F, who has been my main focus for most of her life, especially after Mark became less involved. Sophie recently got engaged to her long-term boyfriend, Alex, 29M. They've been together for 6 years, and she's extremely happy with him. From the beginning, Sophie made it clear she wanted a wedding that would feel personal and meaningful rather than extravagant. That said, she also made it clear that she expected me to contribute financially, claiming that I am the only parent she trusts to handle money responsibly. I have always been careful about finances, and I've taught Sophie the importance of budgeting and planning. I save some money specifically for emergencies and for my own future needs. I never promised to fund her wedding, and I was under the impression she understood that any financial contribution from me would be limited to a reasonable gesture, like helping with small portions of the wedding costs or contributing to decorations or food. About 2 months ago, Sophie asked me to cover a significant portion of the wedding expenses, about $20,000, which is roughly half of the estimated total cost. She insisted that I'm the only person she trusts to handle the money without it being wasted or mismanaged. I was taken aback and explained that this is far beyond what I am comfortable spending. I suggested alternatives. I could help her budget the wedding to reduce costs, contribute a smaller, manageable amount, or help with DIY projects to save money. She refused these suggestions and became very emotional, saying that not supporting her fully would ruin her wedding and that I was choosing my comfort over her happiness. I tried to explain my perspective calmly. I reminded her that I have responsibilities and future plans of my own, including paying off my mortgage, saving for retirement, and maintaining financial security in case of unexpected emergencies. Spending such a large sum of money on a single event would jeopardize those plans. I also emphasized that I wanted her wedding to be special, but that I could help in non-financial ways, like organizing the guest list, helping with venue decorations, and coordinating with vendors. Sophie was visibly upset and said I was being selfish. She also claimed that if I refused, she would have to scale down the wedding significantly or ask Alex's family, who she believes might not contribute as responsibly. She implied that my refusal could affect our relationship permanently and said that it felt like I didn't care about her special day. Over the past few weeks, our relationship has been tense. Sophie sends me passive-aggressive texts and makes comments on social media about parents who refuse to support their children. She has stopped discussing wedding planning with me altogether, assuming that I won't be willing to help financially. I have tried to remain supportive in other ways, offering to attend vendor meetings, helping with DIY projects, and offering moral support, but she refuses these gestures, insisting that money is the main form of help she needs. I also have some pressure from my family. My sister and mother say I should give more money to Sophie and that this is a once-in-a-lifetime event. They argue that I should sacrifice some financial security for the sake of her happiness. I understand their point, but I also feel that sacrificing such a significant portion of my savings is unreasonable. I do not want to go into debt or compromise my future for the sake of one event, no matter how important it is to Sophie. I'm stuck in a moral dilemma. I love Sophie and want her to have a beautiful wedding. I want to support her in any way I can, but I cannot reconcile the idea of giving her an amount of money that would put me at financial risk. I feel that my boundaries are reasonable, and I have offered numerous alternatives that still show my support and involvement. At the same time, I am worried that my refusal may permanently damage our relationship, and that thought makes me feel guilty. I keep asking myself if I'm being selfish, but I also feel that parenting adult children does not mean giving up financial independence or security. Sophie is insisting that I am the only person she trusts, and she has expressed deep disappointment, which weighs heavily on me. I want our wedding to be joyous and memorable, but I also have to consider my long-term well-being. AITA for refusing to fund my adult daughter's wedding to the extent she wants, even though she claims I am the only parent she trusts and is upset by my decision. AITA for confronting my friend about her constantly copying my life and feeling attacked. I, 28F, have a close friend, Jenna, 27F, whom I've known since college. We've always been very similar in interests and lifestyle, which is why we got along so well at first. Over the past few years, though, I've noticed a pattern that has started to make me feel frustrated and even a little manipulated, and I'm struggling with whether I overreacted when I addressed it with her directly. When we first met, our similarities felt natural. Same taste in music, similar fashion sense, both into hiking and travel. I never minded sharing recommendations, but lately it has begun to feel less like friendship and more like imitation. For example, I recently moved into a new apartment, and within a few months, Jenna moved into a nearly identical apartment in the same neighborhood, even down to the style of furniture I had chosen. Initially, I brushed it off as coincidence, but patterns kept emerging. I started noticing that whenever I picked up a new hobby or started a new routine, Jenna would soon take it up as well. I started running and joined a local running group. Within weeks, she was signing up for the same group, mentioning she had always wanted to try running, even though she had never shown any prior interest. I started sharing recipes and workout routines online. Suddenly, she was posting pictures of the same meals, workouts, and weekend adventures. At first, I laughed about it with other friends, joking that Jenna was my mini-me, but deep down, it started to make me uncomfortable. The breaking point came when I got a promotion at work and posted about it on social media. Within 2 weeks, Jenna announced that she had been promoted to the same position at her company. I later found out that she had been applying for similar roles, but the timing and the way she presented it, mirroring my own announcement, felt almost like she was competing with me or trying to replicate my achievements. I realized it wasn't just a matter of shared interests. It felt like my life was becoming a template for hers. I tried subtle hints at first. I mentioned in conversation how I felt unique in certain choices and experiences, hoping she would understand without confrontation. She laughed it off or said she was inspired by me, which I found dismissive. I felt like my feelings were being minimized, so I decided I needed to be more direct. I invited her to coffee and explained how I felt. I told her that I appreciated our friendship, but had been feeling uncomfortable because it seemed like she was copying my life choices down to the smallest details. I explained that I value individuality and that seeing my hobbies, purchases, and lifestyle replicated so closely made me feel like I was being overshadowed or that my experiences were being co-opted. I emphasized that I wasn't trying to dictate what she does, but I wanted acknowledgement of the pattern and an honest discussion about boundaries. Her reaction was explosive. She immediately denied that she was copying me and said I was being ridiculous and too sensitive. She accused me of being controlling and jealous and said that I had no right to tell her how to live her life. She even brought up the fact that I had shared my successes publicly on social media, implying that I had invited her to follow along and that I was trying to guilt her for having similar experiences. The conversation devolved into arguing, and I ended up leaving feeling frustrated and hurt. After that, she stopped responding to my messages for a few weeks, though she continued to post online about activities that mirrored mine. I felt excluded and invalidated, as if my feelings didn't matter. Mutual friends say that Jenna feels attacked and thinks I was accusing her of being a copycat, while others say I had a right to express discomfort with boundaries being crossed. I started questioning myself. I know some overlap in hobbies or lifestyle is normal among friends, but the pattern feels too consistent to be coincidence. I feel guilty for confronting her because she believes I accuse her of intentionally undermining me, which I did not. I was simply expressing that the constant mirroring of my life choices was affecting my sense of individuality and the dynamic of our friendship. Since the confrontation, our friendship has been strained. I've tried to engage normally, but it feels like there's a wall between us. I feel like my concerns were reasonable and about preserving my personal space and self-expression, but I worry I may have escalated things unnecessarily and made her feel attacked. I also considered stepping back from the friendship, but it's complicated because we have a long history, shared social circles, and mutual support systems. I want to maintain a friendship, but not at the cost of feeling like my identity is being co-opted or dismissed. So, Reddit AITA for confronting my friend about her copying my life choices and feeling hurt by her reaction? Was I unreasonable in trying to address boundaries in a long-term friendship? Or should I have just let it slide? AITA for refusing to co-sign a loan for my sister when she insisted it was just temporary. I, 35F, have always been the responsible sibling in my family. I work full-time as a project manager, have a mortgage, and generally try to stay on top of my finances. My younger sister, Mia, 28F, has a very different approach to money. She's smart and capable, but she has a history of impulsive spending, quitting jobs without a backup plan, and leaning on family when things go wrong. Over the years, I've helped her in small ways, paying a utility bill when she got behind, lending her money for emergencies, but I've always tried to set boundaries because I've seen how easily things spiral when I bail her out completely. A couple of months ago, Mia called me in a panic. She had found her dream apartment, which is significantly more expensive than what she's used to, and needed help securing it because the landlord required a co-signer. She said she had the rent saved for the first few months, but didn't meet the income requirement for the lease. She begged me to co-sign, promising she would pay her rent on time and that it was just temporary until her freelance work picked up. She swore this would only be for a year or two, and that she had a solid plan for increasing her income. I was hesitant, but wanted to support her in her excitement, so I asked for more details. When we sat down, it became clear that her plan wasn't as solid as she made it sound. Her freelance income fluctuates drastically. She hasn't consistently saved more than a few $100s, and she has several small debts she hasn't been managing well. I explained that co-signing a lease is essentially guaranteeing the rent if she can't pay it. If she missed a payment, my credit would be at risk, and I could be legally pursued for the rent. I also mentioned that if anything went wrong, it could strain our relationship because she might feel resentful or embarrassed if I had to step in. Mia reacted with frustration. She said I was overreacting, that nothing would go wrong, and that I was being unsupportive and controlling. I tried to compromise by offering alternatives. I suggested she find a roommate, get a smaller place, or even look for rental assistance programs that could help her bridge the gap. I also offered a one-time loan to cover the deposit and first month's rent if she really couldn't make it work. She rejected all of these ideas and insisted that co-signing was the only way she could get the apartment. She kept saying, "You trust me, right? You know I can handle this." I reiterated my concerns, pointing out her financial history and the unpredictability of her income. That's when the argument escalated. Mia accused me of being selfish, uncaring, and even the reason she can't move forward in life. The tension spread beyond us. Our parents got involved after she called them, telling them I was refusing to support her in a critical moment. They argued that family should help each other, especially when it's temporary, and that I was being unreasonable. I explained the legal and financial risks, hoping they would understand, but they kept pressing, suggesting I was punishing her for being ambitious. My partner also weighed in, supporting my decision, saying that it's not just about helping her. It's about protecting our financial security and avoiding putting ourselves in a situation we can't control. After a few weeks of back and forth, Mia went behind my back and asked my parents to co-sign for her instead. They declined, saying they couldn't afford to take that risk either. She finally found a cheaper apartment through a roommate situation, but she's still upset with me. She refuses to talk much, posts cryptic things on social media about family not helping, and has avoided family gatherings because she says she doesn't feel welcome. I feel torn. On one hand, I know I made the financially responsible choice. Co-signing would have put me on the hook for a significant amount of money, and I could have been left with serious debt if she couldn't pay. On the other hand, I feel guilty seeing her struggle knowing that my refusal contributed to her frustration. I've tried to help in other ways, helping her budget, researching affordable apartments, and offering small financial assistance, but it hasn't seemed to matter. Some friends say I did the right thing and that co-signing would have been reckless, but others suggest I could have done more as her older sister. I understand the risks, and I try to be supportive without endangering myself, but I still worry about the long-term impact on our relationship. She's always been sensitive about feeling unsupported, and now I feel like she might resent me for years. AITA for refusing to co-sign a lease for my sister, even though she insisted it was temporary and claimed she had everything under control. Could I have handled it differently, or was it right to prioritize my financial security and boundaries? AITA for refusing to let my boyfriend stay in my house full-time, even though my sister says I'm being unfair. I, 29F, live in a 3-bedroom apartment that I rent in the city. I've been living here alone for about 5 years, and I've grown very attached to my space. My home is organized in a way that works for me. I have a dedicated office space, a reading nook, and a small area for my hobbies. I also have some valuable furniture and electronics that I've accumulated over the years, so I'm very cautious about letting people move in. My sister, Lily, 27F, and I have always been close. She lives in another city about 2 hours away, and we catch up regularly over calls and visits. She has been in my life, a constant source of support, but she also tends to take a very direct approach when she thinks someone is being selfish or stubborn. About 8 months ago, I started dating someone named Matt, 32M. He's nice, funny, and we get along well. We've been exclusive for 6 months now, and our relationship has been going great. However, from the beginning, I was clear that I wanted to maintain my own space and that I wasn't ready for him to move in. I explained that I value my independence and that my apartment is my personal sanctuary. Matt initially agreed, but over time, he began hinting that he wanted to stay over more frequently and eventually move in full-time. He started leaving some of his things here, asking if he could keep clothes and toiletries, and gradually increasing the number of nights he spent in my apartment. I noticed that my routines and personal space were being disrupted. My office was cluttered with his belongings, my kitchen supplies were being used more rapidly, and I felt stressed that my home was no longer fully mine. 2 weeks ago, Matt asked if he could move in permanently. He said it would make our relationship easier, more intimate, and less complicated. I told him that I wasn't ready for that step. I explained that while I care about him deeply, I need my own space to function well, and moving in together is a huge commitment that I want to take slowly. He got upset, said he felt rejected, and left in a bad mood. After the conversation, I called Lily to get her advice. I expected her to understand my perspective, but she reacted differently. She told me that I was being unreasonable and that if I truly cared about Matt, I would let him move in. She said that I was being overly controlling about my apartment and that my fear of sharing space was selfish. She kept saying that I needed to compromise if I wanted a serious relationship and that I was creating unnecessary conflict. Lily even suggested that I was being unfair to Matt because he couldn't fully participate in our relationship if he wasn't living with me. She told me that I should put aside my personal preferences for the sake of the relationship, implying that if I didn't, I might lose him. I tried to explain to her that my decision isn't about rejecting Matt or being difficult. It's about boundaries and maintaining my independence. I also offered compromises. Matt could stay over certain nights per week, we could spend weekends together at his place, or we could even plan for a future move-in once I felt more comfortable. Lily dismissed these ideas and continued to say I was being rigid. Since then, our family dynamic has become strained. Lily keeps making comments whenever we meet, saying things like, "You're going to regret this," and "You need to grow up and let someone in your life." Matt also seems frustrated. He has started spending more time away from me, and I feel tensioned whenever we communicate. I haven't changed my position because I believe moving in together is a serious step that should be mutual and not forced. I feel conflicted because I don't want to lose Matt or cause problems with my sister. I understand that living together can strengthen a relationship, but I also feel strongly about maintaining my personal space. My boundaries are important to me, and I don't want to compromise them out of guilt or pressure from my family. I have tried to show my commitment in other ways, spending quality time together, helping him with his projects, and planning trips and activities. But despite these efforts, he and my sister both seem to feel that I'm holding back. I feel like I am being responsible with my decision and that it's unfair to label me selfish for wanting to maintain my home as a private space. AITA for refusing to let my boyfriend move in full time. Even though my sister says I'm being unreasonable and unfair to him. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior. I, 28F, have a complicated relationship with my older sister, Lisa, 32F. We grew up in a pretty traditional household, and while I love her, we've always had a lot of friction. Our disagreements mostly stem from her tendency to dominate family decisions and my unwillingness to just go along with everything. Despite this, I've always tried to maintain a relationship with her, even when I strongly disagreed with her choices. About a year ago, Lisa announced she was engaged to a man named Matt, 34M. At first, I was cautiously happy for her, but over time, I began to notice some troubling patterns. Matt can be charming, but he also has a very controlling streak. He frequently dismisses Lisa's opinions in favor of his own and seems to think he should be the one running every aspect of her life. I initially chalked it up to wedding stress, but things only got worse as the months went on. Lisa and Matt decided to have a destination wedding, which they made clear would be expensive for all guests. Many family members expressed concerns about the cost, but they insisted it would be worth it. When I brought up that not everyone could afford it, Matt brushed off my concerns, saying that if we really cared about Lisa, we would find a way to be there. I didn't push too hard at the time, but it left a sour taste in my mouth. Over the months leading up to the wedding, Matt started sending messages directly to me about family responsibilities and how I needed to contribute to certain events. He sent me a spreadsheet of tasks he expected me to complete, which felt incredibly controlling. I responded politely but firmly that I didn't appreciate being micromanaged, especially by someone I wasn't close to. Lisa told me to ignore Matt, but he continued, which put me in a difficult position because I didn't want to create conflict with my sister, yet I also didn't want to be bullied. The final straw came a few weeks before the wedding. Lisa asked me to help with some DIY decorations, which I agreed to do. When I arrived at her house, Matt was there supervising everything and correcting every move I made. He criticized how I was cutting ribbons and arranging flowers, telling me it wasn't professional enough. I was stunned because these were simple tasks and not his business to critique. I tried to laugh it off and continued working, but the atmosphere became so tense that I couldn't focus. By the end of the day, I was frustrated, stressed, and in tears. Lisa seemed sympathetic but didn't intervene with Matt. After that day, I seriously reconsidered attending the wedding. I tried talking to Lisa about my feelings, explaining that Matt's behavior made me uncomfortable and that I didn't feel like myself around him. She responded that I was overreacting and that I should just try to be nice for one day. She emphasized that this was her day and I needed to support her. I understand it's her wedding, but it felt like she was prioritizing Matt over me and dismissing my concerns. I finally made the decision to decline attending. I sent a heartfelt message explaining that I loved her and wanted her to have a beautiful wedding, but that I could not be in an environment where I felt bullied and disrespected. I offered to celebrate with her in another way after the wedding, such as taking her out for a weekend or throwing a small family gathering. I also told her I hoped she would understand that this wasn't about her, but about feeling unsafe and undermined. Her reaction was immediate and harsh. She accused me of being selfish and told me I was choosing Matt over her. She called me dramatic and said I was ruining the family dynamic. My parents were upset too. They understand some of Matt's behavior, but feel that skipping the wedding is too extreme. Some relatives have reached out, saying I should just grin and bear it for one day, while others are quietly supportive. I've tried to explain that it's not about the wedding itself, but about the pattern of controlling and dismissive behavior I witnessed, which I'm not comfortable being around. Since declining, I've received mixed reactions from friends. Some say I was right to protect myself from an uncomfortable situation, while others say family events should take precedence over personal grievances. I feel torn because I genuinely love my sister and don't want to create a permanent rift, but I also can't compromise my mental well-being just to attend a single day. I've been trying to maintain communication with Lisa, sending her messages and photos, celebrating her engagement, but she rarely responds positively. I'm starting to wonder if I handled this the right way. Could I have done more to mediate the situation or confront Matt directly? Should I have swallowed my discomfort for the sake of family unity? Or was it reasonable to prioritize my mental health over attending a single day, even if it hurts my sister? I genuinely hope I can repair the relationship after the wedding, but right now it feels strained and fragile. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé's behavior, even though it has caused a lot of conflict in the family. AITA for refusing to babysit my niece after my sister accused me of being selfish. I, 34F, have a younger sister, Emily, 31F, who has always had a very different approach to parenting than I do. I have a 7-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter, and Emily has a 2-year-old son. Over the years, I have tried to maintain a healthy relationship with her while also respecting boundaries. But a recent incident has left me questioning whether I'm in the wrong. Emily and I have a long history. Growing up, we were close, but as adults, our differences in lifestyle and priorities have sometimes caused friction. I've always been the type to plan ahead, follow routines, and consider the long-term effects of decisions, especially when it comes to kids. Emily tends to be more spontaneous, less organized, and more impulsive. I never judge her parenting style outright, but I have sometimes disagreed with her decisions. About a week ago, Emily called me in a panic. She had been invited to a last-minute work trip that required her to be away for 2 days. She asked if I could watch her son for the entire period, which I immediately knew would be challenging. Her son is energetic and requires constant supervision, and my own kids are at ages where their routines are sensitive to disruption. Adding another toddler into the mix for 48 hours would be exhausting, and it would also interfere with my work schedule. I explained my concerns to Emily. I said that while I would love to help in smaller doses, taking care of her son for 2 full days was not feasible without severely disrupting my own household. I suggested alternatives, like hiring a babysitter, asking a family member, or even having her son stay with a close friend for part of the time. Emily immediately got defensive. She accused me of being selfish, claiming that I only think about my own convenience and never consider her emergencies. She said that because I have experience with kids, I should be willing to step in and that family should support each other unconditionally. I tried to reason with her, explaining that helping doesn't mean sacrificing my own family's needs or well-being. I reminded her that I had previously helped with short babysitting sessions, school pickups, and other errands, but that this request was different in scope and impact. Emily didn't accept this explanation. She said I was prioritizing my own comfort over family, and implied that I was a bad sister. I stood my ground and told her no, I couldn't commit to watching her son for 2 days straight. I felt guilty, but knew that agreeing would lead to exhaustion, stress, and tension within my household. She got extremely upset and started sending multiple texts accusing me of being unhelpful, cold, and inconsiderate. She even suggested that my kids wouldn't learn empathy or generosity if I refused to help family in need. After that, she went around telling other relatives that I had refused to help and painted me as selfish. Our parents were upset initially, as they assumed I was being unreasonable, but after hearing my side, they seemed to understand that I was trying to balance responsibilities. Some cousins and friends think I overreacted and should have found a way to make it work, even if it was inconvenient. Others agree that expecting someone to watch a toddler for 48 hours at the drop of a hat is unrealistic and that Emily's approach was unfair. What complicates this further is that Emily has a history of asking for last-minute favors. In the past, she has asked me to drive her kid across town at odd hours, attend her son's doctor appointments when she had no time, and even pick up supplies for her. While I have helped with many of these things, the cumulative effect has left me feeling used. This time, I finally drew a line. I felt that my refusal was a matter of necessity, not malice. Since this incident, our communication has cooled off. Emily hasn't spoken to me much, and I feel like our relationship has been strained. I have tried to reach out to discuss boundaries calmly, but she seems unwilling to engage without framing it as an accusation against me. I feel hurt because I genuinely want to support her, but not at the expense of my own family's well-being and mental health. I have considered alternative compromises like helping for a few hours each day instead of the full 48 hours, but she rejected those options. She insisted that only full-time care would work for her. I feel like I'm stuck between wanting to help my family and protecting my own household from overwhelming stress. Reddit AITA for refusing to babysit my niece for 2 full days after my sister accused me of being selfish? Was I wrong to draw a boundary? Or is her expectation genuinely reasonable and I'm overreacting? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my best friend move in with me after a breakup, even though she said it would be temporary. I, 29F, have always valued my independence and my personal space. I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in a city that's fairly expensive, and I work full-time as a graphic designer. Over the years, I've cultivated a stable routine, and my apartment has become a sanctuary for me, a place to recharge, work on projects, and host a small circle of close friends occasionally. My best friend, Sophie, 28F, has always been a huge part of my life. We met in college and bonded over similar tastes in music, movies, and just general life philosophy. We've supported each other through jobs, breakups, and family drama, and I consider her family in every sense of the word. About a month ago, Sophie called me late one night, sounding devastated. She had just broken up with her boyfriend of 3 years. She explained that the relationship ended badly, with a lot of yelling and accusations, and that she felt completely lost. She didn't have family nearby, and her lease was up at her current apartment, which she shared with her ex. She asked if she could move in with me just for a little while until she got her life together, promising it would be temporary. I didn't say no immediately. I told her I needed to think about it, explaining that my apartment is not very big and I value my routine and solitude. I started weighing the pros and cons. On one hand, Sophie is my best friend, and I wanted to help her through a hard time. On the other hand, I knew from experience that even temporary arrangements could extend indefinitely. I also worried about how it might affect my work, my mental health, and my daily life. I had seen situations where friends moved in during crises and things got tense. Arguments about chores, schedules, and privacy. I decided to tell Sophie that I couldn't have her move in, but I offered alternatives. I suggested she look for a short-term sublet, offered to help her find affordable temporary housing, and told her I could help financially with a deposit if needed. I also said she could stay over for a few nights if she needed to crash temporarily, but permanent living arrangements weren't feasible. Sophie reacted poorly. She started crying on the phone and accused me of being selfish, uncaring, and a terrible friend. She said that families should support each other, even if it's uncomfortable, and that I was prioritizing my comfort over her well-being. I tried to explain my position again, emphasizing that my decision was about protecting my mental health and personal space, not about not caring for her. I even reminded her that she could take advantage of all the help I was offering in finding a place, and that I would still spend time with her, cook meals together, or hang out in my apartment. She didn't accept it and ended the call abruptly. After that, things got tense with mutual friends. Sophie posted vague status updates about friends who don't care and people being selfish, and several mutual friends messaged me to ask why I wasn't there for Sophie. A few suggested I should reconsider and let her move in, arguing that close friends should support each other through crises. My partner, who lives with me, agreed with my decision. He said that while he sympathized with Sophie, our home life and privacy are important, and bringing someone in under those circumstances could be destabilizing. We also have a cat who is very anxious around new people, and we worried about the stress it might cause. I heard from Sophie again about 2 weeks later. She had found a temporary sublet nearby with a friend of a friend. It wasn't perfect, and she had to pay a bit more than she wanted, but at least she had a place. She didn't reach out to thank me or acknowledge my help in looking, and she seemed cold when we spoke. Our friendship has been strained since then. She still calls occasionally, but it's awkward. Some mutual friends seem to be taking her side, and I feel like my decision has put me in a negative light socially, even though I try to help her in other ways. I thought a lot about whether I was in the wrong. I feel justified because having her move in could have caused tension, stressed my living situation, and potentially damaged our friendship if things went wrong. I also tried to help in ways that didn't involve compromising my personal boundaries. On the other hand, I do feel guilty because she was genuinely in a bad place and probably felt abandoned by her closest friend. I wonder if I could have handled it differently, maybe by setting stricter rules for living together or having a clear timeline, but I also worry that it wouldn't have solved the underlying issues of cohabiting under stress. So, AITA for refusing to let my best friend move in after a breakup, even though she promised it would be temporary, and instead offering support in other ways. I feel like I tried to help without compromising myself, but I also see why she might feel hurt and unsupported. I want to preserve our friendship, but I don't want to set a precedent that could harm my own life and well-being. AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée move in with us before the wedding. I, 30F, live in a fairly large house I inherited from my grandparents. I've been here alone since finishing grad school, and while I enjoy my independence, I also like having my family around from time to time. My younger brother, Alex, 27M, has been dating his fiancée, Jessica, 26F, for about 2 years now. From the start, I liked Jessica, or at least I thought I did. She seems kind and ambitious, but over the last year, certain things have made me uncomfortable. Alex and Jessica recently got engaged, and they immediately started talking about moving in together before the wedding. I've never lived with a romantic partner outside of my own relationships, so I didn't have any frame of reference, but Alex and Jessica seemed to think it was the natural next step. Then Alex mentioned they were thinking of living in my house temporarily while their apartment renovations were finished. That's when I started feeling uneasy. My house is big, yes, but I value my space and my routines. I got a set schedule with work, hobbies, and some side projects I'm really invested in. I also have some long-term pets that require specific care. I told Alex that I wasn't comfortable with them moving in. I explained that my house isn't set up for another couple, that I need my privacy, and that I didn't want to disrupt my routines. I tried to be polite, emphasizing that I loved both of them and that this wasn't personal, just a matter of space and boundaries. Alex didn't take it well. He accused me of being selfish and said that Jessica is family now and that it would be nice for us to all be under the same roof for a while. He argued that this would be temporary, maybe a couple of months, and that it would save them money and stress. I reminded him that temporary or not, I am not comfortable with it. I also reminded him that being engaged does not automatically give someone the right to live in my house. He got frustrated and started bringing up my own past relationships, claiming that I had no right to make judgments because I had roommates before. That felt unfair to me because living with friends is completely different than hosting an engaged couple who essentially expects to take over the house. The tension escalated when Jessica got involved. She started texting me, asking me to consider the family bonding, and saying it would be great to help each other out. She mentioned that she could contribute to bills or chores. I replied that the issue wasn't money or chores. It was about boundaries and personal space. She said I was being rigid and that family should be flexible. At that point, I felt like my boundaries were being completely dismissed. I tried to compromise. I suggested that they stay with our parents or look for a short-term rental nearby while their apartment was being renovated. I even offered to help them look for options and said I could visit them frequently so we could still spend time together. Alex refused, insisting that it wasn't the same as living together, and Jessica hinted that they might move in anyway unless I changed my mind. That felt like manipulation, and I started to feel stressed and anxious every time I saw messages from them. Finally, I had a long conversation with both Alex and Jessica in person. I calmly explained that my house, my routines, and my mental health are non-negotiable. I told them that I wanted to support them in their engagement and that I love them, but that this is a boundary I cannot compromise on. Alex raised his voice, saying I was being dramatic and unkind. Jessica started crying and said that I didn't trust them or want them around. I tried to stay calm, but it ended with them leaving and me feeling upset and anxious for days. After that, things have been tense. Family gatherings feel awkward, and Alex has barely spoken to me except for necessary logistics. Jessica has not made much of an effort to reach out since, and our relationship feels strained. My parents have expressed disappointment, saying that I should put family first and make sacrifices for my brother's happiness. Some of my friends think I'm being too harsh, saying that letting them stay temporarily is reasonable and I should be more accommodating. Others say that my boundaries are valid and that it's not selfish to protect my personal space and mental health. I honestly feel conflicted. On one hand, I don't want to be the person who ruins my brother's engagement or family relations. On the other hand, I can't imagine living with an engaged couple in my own home and having my life completely upended. I'm already feeling anxious thinking about the next family gathering because of this situation. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée move in with me before the wedding, even though it has caused tension and disappointment in the family. AITA for refusing to let my adult son live with me after he lost his job, even though my family thinks I'm being unreasonable. I, 52F, live alone in a 3-bedroom house that I purchased about 10 years ago. I work full-time as a nurse, and my home is my sanctuary. I like things quiet, organized, and predictable because my job is stressful, and I need a peaceful environment to decompress. Over the years, I've accumulated furniture, electronics, and other possessions that I care about deeply, and I'm very particular about how my space is maintained. My son, Daniel, 26M, has been mostly independent since he finished college, but he's had a history of switching jobs frequently and struggling to manage his finances. He's capable, intelligent, and talented, but he has never been great at long-term planning or responsibility. My ex-husband and I separated when Daniel was young, and I have always been the primary caregiver, so I feel a strong responsibility toward him, but I also believe that independence is important. A few weeks ago, Daniel lost his job due to downsizing. He called me in a panic, explaining that he had no savings, no immediate prospects, and nowhere to stay. I listened and offered emotional support. I suggested alternatives like temporary housing programs, staying with friends, or short-term rentals. I also offered to help him budget, update his resume, and apply for jobs. I wanted to support him without compromising my household. However, Daniel asked if he could move in with me while he looked for work. I explained that my house is not set up for another adult to live permanently, that my work schedule requires a quiet home, and that I have responsibilities that make it difficult to accommodate someone full-time. I also reminded him that he has been independent for years and that living at home again would make him lose momentum in developing life skills. He argued that it would be temporary and that I was the only parent he trusts to manage the situation responsibly. He became increasingly insistent, telling me that it would make his life easier, reduce stress, and allow him to focus on finding a new job. I told him I could help in other ways, contributing financially to a short-term rental, helping him move, assisting with applications, and even visiting frequently to provide support. He refused these options, saying they weren't enough and that they would feel like half support. Things escalated when my sister, Karen, 50F, got involved. She said I was being selfish and that a mother's job is to support her child unconditionally, especially during tough times. She kept saying that I should let Daniel stay and that I was making him suffer unnecessarily. My brother-in-law also expressed frustration, implying that my decision was cruel and that family comes first. They claimed I was prioritizing my comfort over my son's well-being. I have tried to explain my perspective calmly. I love Daniel and want to help him, but I believe that letting him live with me full-time could harm both of us. My home is my refuge after a demanding job, and having someone else here constantly would increase stress levels and disrupt my routines. Additionally, I worry that moving back home permanently, even temporarily, could encourage dependency and prevent him from fully taking responsibility for his life. Daniel is now upset with me. He has been staying at friends' apartments and short-term accommodations, but complains frequently about the inconvenience. He keeps saying I'm his only parent who can help, and he feels abandoned. I also feel guilt because my parents and sister are pressuring me, and the tension has created awkwardness at family gatherings. Despite my boundaries, I have continued helping him in every way I can, paying for small expenses, assisting with job applications, helping set up interviews, and being emotionally supportive. I have offered transportation to and from potential workplaces, helped him organize his finances, and even contributed a smaller amount toward temporary housing. However, Daniel still wants full access to my home, and my extended family continues to criticize me for not giving in. I keep questioning myself. Maybe I'm being too rigid. Maybe I should just let him stay for a few weeks to make things easier. But I also feel strongly that independence is crucial and that I am responsible for guiding him, not enabling him. I worry that giving in would set a precedent and create tension that could affect our relationship in the long term. I want Daniel to succeed and be happy, but I also have a right to maintain my personal space, peace, and routines. I have been balancing support with boundaries, but the pressure from both him and my family makes me feel like I'm the villain in this situation. AITA for refusing to let my adult son live with me after he lost his job. Even though he says I'm the only parent he trusts and my family thinks I'm being unreasonable. AITA for refusing to attend my friend's destination wedding because of my anxiety and feeling accused of being selfish. I, 30F, have a friend, Rachel, 29F, whom I've known since college. We've always had a close bond, sharing countless memories, trips, and late-night heart-to-hearts. Our friendship has survived through career changes, moves, and personal challenges. So when Rachel got engaged and started planning her wedding, I was genuinely excited for her. I expected to be a part of her big day, but things quickly became complicated, and now I'm questioning whether I'm the asshole in this situation. Rachel and her fiancé, Tom, 32M, decided early on that they wanted a destination wedding in a tropical location, far from our hometown. At first, I didn't think much of it. I loved traveling and thought it would be fun, but as soon as the travel details came in, I realized this wedding would be significantly stressful for me. I have severe anxiety and panic attacks triggered by unfamiliar travel, flying, and being in situations where I feel out of control. Over the years, I've developed strategies to manage it, but I still avoid large trips that could overwhelm me. When Rachel formally sent me the invitation, it included information about flights, hotels, and a detailed itinerary. She and Tom requested that all guests arrive at least 2 days before the wedding for pre-wedding events, which meant at least 5 full days away from my work, my pets, and my routine. I knew right away that attending this wedding would likely trigger a major anxiety episode, and I started weighing my options. I tried to find solutions that might make it manageable. I looked into therapy techniques, medication adjustments, and even the possibility of traveling with a close friend for support. None of it felt feasible, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the stress would overshadow any enjoyment of the wedding. I also had financial considerations. The travel, hotel, and wedding-related expenses were substantial, and while I could technically afford it, the financial strain would add to my anxiety. I ultimately decided that I could not attend the wedding. I wrote Rachel a message explaining my situation. I told her how much I loved her, how excited I was about her wedding, and how sad I was that my anxiety and travel limitations would prevent me from being there in person. I expressed that I wanted to celebrate her in another way, maybe a smaller get-together after she returned, a video call during the ceremony, or even helping with some wedding-related tasks from home. I emphasized that this decision was about my mental health and not about my feelings toward her or the wedding itself. Rachel's response was unexpectedly harsh. She said that I was being selfish, that my excuses were ruining her special day, and that she had expected all her close friends to be there in person. She accused me of prioritizing my comfort over our friendship and implied that I didn't care enough about her happiness to make it work. She also mentioned that she had made sacrifices to have friends attend the wedding and that my absence would be noticed and hurtful. I tried to explain again, calmly, that this was about my mental health and that no amount of sacrifice on her part could make my anxiety manageable. I told her I would love to celebrate her in other ways, but she accused me of not trying hard enough and throwing away our friendship for convenience. The conversation ended with her ignoring my messages for several days. Mutual friends have weighed in, and opinions are mixed. Some say Rachel is right to feel disappointed, and that friends sometimes need to push past personal comfort for important milestones. Others think she is being unreasonable, as mental health concerns are legitimate and should be respected, especially when attending a destination wedding is not a trivial undertaking. I feel caught in the middle, genuinely sad for my friend, but also protective of my own limits. Since declining, our friendship has cooled. Rachel doesn't engage with me on social media about the wedding and hasn't responded to messages about post-wedding celebrations I've suggested. I feel hurt because I thought she would understand, given our long history and the fact that I've supported her through many personal milestones in the past. I also feel guilty because it seems she interprets my absence as a lack of care, which is not true at all. I've considered alternative compromises, such as sending a gift with a heartfelt note, hiring someone to record the ceremony, or even participating in some pre-wedding planning remotely. While these gestures may show support, I fear Rachel still feels betrayed that I won't be physically present. I also worry that by standing firm, I'm allowing her to perceive my decision as selfish rather than necessary. Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my friend's destination wedding because of my severe anxiety and personal limitations, even though it upset her and she accused me of being selfish? Was I wrong to prioritize my mental health over attending an important milestone in a friend's life? Or is her reaction disproportionate? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she excluded me from the planning process? I, 31F, have always been close to my family, especially my younger sister, Lauren, 28F. We grew up in a small town, and while we have our differences, I've always considered us best friends. I was genuinely excited when she got engaged last year, and I wanted to be involved in every step of the process. I've always enjoyed helping with family events, and I thought being a supportive older sister meant helping her have the wedding she wanted. However, things started to go downhill when she announced she wanted a small, intimate ceremony with only close family and a few friends. At first, I understood that she wanted a limited guest list. The problem arose when she began planning everything without even consulting me. I wasn't just a guest. I was expecting to have a role as a sister, like helping pick the dress, attending dress fittings, or being part of pre-wedding events. Instead, she hired a wedding planner, set the dates for dress fittings, and booked the venue and photographer all without telling me. When I tried to express my desire to be involved, she said that she wanted the planning to be stress-free and that she didn't want me to interfere. I felt hurt, but I tried to give her space, thinking maybe she just needed autonomy. Then came the engagement party. She invited only certain friends and didn't tell me in advance. I found out through social media that the party had already happened. I texted her to ask why she hadn't invited me, and she replied that it was a very small gathering and that she wanted to keep it simple and intimate. I tried to explain that as her sister, I felt left out and that I wanted to celebrate with her, but she brushed it off, saying she didn't want any drama and that I should respect her wishes. Over the next few months, this pattern continued. She made decisions about the wedding, color schemes, invitations, seating arrangements, without consulting me. When I offered help or even suggestions, she would say things like, "I've got this handled," or "I really want it my way." I started feeling like she didn't value me as her sister, only as someone who would sit quietly at the event and smile. I tried talking to her multiple times about how excluded I felt, but each time she told me I was overreacting and that her wedding wasn't a negotiation. The breaking point came when she asked me to be a bridesmaid. I was initially excited, but when I received the details, I realized that all the bridesmaids had already been involved in dress fittings, hair trials, and planning events, and I was expected to show up only on the wedding day. I felt like my role was meaningless and purely symbolic. I brought this up with her, explaining that I wanted to be involved in a meaningful way and not just show up to take photos. She told me that this was the arrangement for everyone and that I needed to get over it if I was feeling hurt. At this point, I started feeling resentful. I didn't want to just be a guest, and I didn't want to be a bridesmaid under conditions that made me feel like an outsider in my own family. I also felt hurt by the repeated pattern of exclusion. After several days of thinking, I decided I couldn't attend the wedding. I told her that I couldn't celebrate in a way that made me feel invisible and that I needed to step back. I offered to send a gift and congratulatory note, and I tried to make it clear that this wasn't about punishing her, but about protecting my own emotional well-being. Lauren reacted very badly. She accused me of being dramatic, selfish, and jealous. She told other family members that I had stormed off and refused to be part of her special day. Our parents have been pressuring me to reconsider, saying I'm being unreasonable and that weddings are supposed to be about love and family. They argue that by not attending, I'm creating a rift that will be hard to repair. On the other hand, some friends have told me that my feelings are valid and that it's okay to step away from situations that feel emotionally unsafe. Since making this decision, our communication has been minimal. Lauren has stopped answering my messages except when absolutely necessary, and our interactions at family events have been tense. I do miss being involved, and I miss her, but I can't shake the feeling that attending the wedding would have reinforced the idea that my feelings and boundaries don't matter. I keep questioning if I overreacted because it's her day and maybe my presence wasn't necessary. At the same time, I feel that my absence is a statement about needing respect and inclusion as her sister, not about ruining her day. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after feeling excluded from the planning process. I tried to explain my feelings and offered support in other ways, but she and our family see it as an overreaction and selfish. I genuinely want to maintain our relationship, but I also don't want to compromise my emotional well-being for the sake of attending an event where I felt invisible. Was I wrong to step back, or should family obligations always take precedence over personal feelings in situations like this? AITA for refusing to pay for my best friend's wedding because of her unreasonable demands? I, 29F, have been best friends with Emily, 30F, since college. We've shared practically everything over the years, and I've always considered her family to be like my own. When she got engaged last year, I was genuinely excited for her and ready to help in any way I could. However, the situation escalated quickly, and I now feel like I might be in the wrong. Or maybe I'm justified. I'm not sure. Emily and her fiancé, Dan, 31M, decided on a fairly traditional wedding with a few extravagant touches. From the start, Emily expressed that she wanted her wedding to be perfect, which is understandable. But soon it became clear that perfect meant that anyone attending or helping was expected to spend large amounts of money. Initially, she asked me to help plan a bridal shower. I was happy to help, but then she started giving me a list of vendors, decorations, and favors, all at premium prices. When I suggested more budget-friendly alternatives, she dismissed them as not classy enough and insisted that everything had to meet her exact specifications. I agreed to contribute financially for some things, thinking it would be worth it for my best friend, but the costs started piling up. Then came the bridesmaid dress situation. Emily had a very specific vision and picked out a dress that cost over $400. She insisted that every bridesmaid buy it, even though some of the other bridesmaids were students or just starting their careers. I told her I could manage it, but I asked if we could maybe split the cost with her somehow or get a discount if we bought multiple dresses. She refused, saying that real friends would pay without question because it was part of her wedding. I was already feeling a bit uneasy, but I brushed it off for her sake. The tipping point came with the honeymoon contribution. Emily decided she wanted a luxury trip abroad and announced that each bridesmaid would be expected to chip in for some part of the honeymoon expenses. She said it was optional but strongly implied that anyone who didn't contribute would be considered unsupportive. The amount she suggested for me was $1,000. I was shocked. I have my own bills, student loans, and savings goals, and I simply cannot afford to contribute that much. I explained this to her, stressing that I still wanted to be supportive in other ways, like helping with decorations, planning, or being present on her wedding day. She reacted poorly, saying that if I truly cared about her happiness, I would find a way. I tried to negotiate. I suggested covering some smaller elements of the honeymoon, like a dinner or an excursion, but she refused and said that partial contributions were meaningless. She accused me of being selfish, unsupportive, and even said I wasn't a true friend if I couldn't help her financially. I felt blindsided because I've spent years being there for her emotionally, helping her through breakups, job changes, and family crises, and now it seemed like all of that counted for nothing unless I paid thousands of dollars. After several tense conversations, I told Emily I could not contribute to her honeymoon and that I would only participate in the wedding in ways that didn't require huge expenses on my part. She was furious, telling me that I was ruining her wedding and that our friendship was clearly not as important to me as it was to her. Our communication has been strained ever since, and I haven't spoken to her much outside of wedding-related necessities. Other friends and family have weighed in. Some think I'm being unreasonable and should just pay the $1,000 to avoid conflict, while others say that Emily is being manipulative and that I have every right to set financial boundaries. I feel guilty because I don't want to hurt her or come across as uncaring, but at the same time, I feel pressured into spending money I don't have. I've always believed that friendship shouldn't be measured in dollars, and now I'm questioning whether my values clash too strongly with hers. I've considered talking to her one last time to explain my side, but I'm worried it might make things worse. I also worry about attending the wedding at this point because of the tension and her resentment toward me. I'm torn between wanting to support my best friend on what is supposed to be the happiest day of her life and protecting myself from unreasonable demands and financial strain. So, AITA for refusing to pay for my best friend's honeymoon, even though she sees it as a measure of my support and friendship. AITA for refusing to let my sister's partner live in my house, even though she says it's the only way they can be together. I, 34F, own a townhouse in a quiet suburban neighborhood. I've been living here for about 6 years, and I like to keep my home organized, quiet, and comfortable. My house is small but functional, and I've invested a lot of time and money into making it a place where I feel safe and at peace. I live alone, and I genuinely value my independence and privacy. My sister, Megan, 30F, has always been a bit more spontaneous in life. She tends to make decisions quickly and sometimes doesn't think about the practical consequences. She's currently in a serious relationship with a man named Peter, 33M. They've been together for about a year, and she says that Peter is the one she wants to spend her life with. From the beginning, I noticed a few things about Peter that made me uneasy. He can be very demanding, has a tendency to push boundaries, and I've seen him act in ways that show a lack of respect for other people's personal space. Megan brushed off my concerns, insisting I was being overly cautious. A couple of months ago, Megan called me in tears. She explained that she and Peter were having problems finding a place to live together because Peter's lease was ending unexpectedly, and they didn't have the funds for a deposit elsewhere. She asked if Peter could move into my townhouse temporarily, just until they found another apartment. I was taken aback. I told her that while I sympathized with their situation, I wasn't comfortable letting him move in. I explained that I work from home, that my routines and mental health rely on having my space, and that I couldn't have someone living with me full-time who I barely know and who has already shown behaviors I find disrespectful. Megan begged. She said it was only temporary, that it would help them stabilize their relationship, and that I was the only family member she trusted to provide a safe and stable environment. She framed it as if letting him stay wasn't just about the apartment, but about the health of their relationship. I held my ground and said no. I offered alternatives, helping them find a short-term rental, contributing to a deposit, or even letting Peter stay a couple of nights per week, but I drew a firm line at him living there full-time. This led to a huge argument. Megan accused me of being selfish and controlling. She said that if I loved her, I would support her relationship and make room in my life for someone she cared about. She also started saying that I was prioritizing my comfort over family loyalty. I reminded her that supporting her doesn't mean compromising my boundaries or putting my home at risk, but she wouldn't accept that. After the argument, things escalated. Megan started posting on social media vague messages about family not supporting each other, and Peter started texting me, trying to convince me he would be careful, that he'd pay for groceries, clean after himself, and respect my rules. I appreciated the politeness, but I still didn't trust the situation. I knew from experience that even well-intentioned guests can disrupt the household when living there full-time. Our parents got involved as well. They called and told me I was being unreasonable and that a mother and sister should always help family in need. They argued that my townhouse was big enough, that I shouldn't worry about minor disruptions, and that I was overthinking the situation. I explained that this wasn't about the size of the house, but about my mental health, my routines, and my personal boundaries. They seemed unconvinced and kept implying that if I refused, it would permanently damage my relationship with Megan. Since then, Megan has been distant and passive-aggressive. She won't talk to me about other aspects of her life, and whenever we meet, she makes small comments about my selfishness. Peter has stopped texting directly, but the tension is palpable whenever they visit or we cross paths. Yvette offered to help in ways that don't involve him living in my home. I've assisted with finding apartments, provided money for deposits, and offered advice on budgeting and logistics. None of that seems to satisfy her. She insists that it's not enough unless he stays in my house. I keep questioning myself. Maybe I am being too rigid. Maybe I should be more accommodating for the sake of my sister's happiness. But I also know that letting him live here would create stress, disrupt my routines, and possibly damage my relationship with both Megan and Peter if things went wrong. I value my boundaries and my home's safety and peace, and I feel that giving in would set a precedent I don't want to establish. I also feel frustrated because I am being portrayed as the villain when I have offered multiple forms of support that respect my limits. I love Megan and want her to be happy, but I cannot compromise my own well-being and sense of security for this situation. I feel trapped between wanting to help my sister and protecting my personal space. AITA for refusing to let my sister's partner move into my house, even though she says it's the only way their relationship can survive and my family thinks I'm being unfair. AITA for refusing to let my sister move back into my house after she lost her job and accusing me of being unsupportive. I, 36F, have a younger sister, Olivia, 33F, who has always struggled with maintaining steady employment and managing her finances. Our relationship has always been complicated. Growing up, we were close, but as adults, I have taken on more of a responsible sibling role, often feeling like I have to set boundaries to avoid chaos. I have a stable career, own my house, and have a routine that works for me. Olivia has always been more spontaneous and less consistent, which has sometimes created tension between us. Recently, Olivia lost her job due to company downsizing. She called me in tears, explaining her situation and asking if she could move back into my house temporarily until she got back on her feet. At first, I was sympathetic. I wanted to help her, and I understand that losing a job can be stressful and disorienting. I also know that she doesn't have many options for housing. She had been living in a rented apartment that she could no longer afford after losing her income. However, I hesitated because of our past experiences. Olivia has moved in with me twice before during financial hardships, and each time it created tension. She had difficulty following house rules, would leave the kitchen a mess, sometimes invite friends over without asking, and often relied on me for groceries or bills. Both times, it ended with arguments and a stressful environment for everyone involved. I wanted to help, but I also knew I couldn't risk the same issues happening again. I tried to approach this carefully. I told Olivia that I wanted to help her, but I couldn't have her move in without a plan. I suggested that she look for short-term rental options, temporary housing programs, or even staying with another family member for a short period. I also offered to help her update her resume, reach out to her network, and provide support in job applications. I was willing to help in ways that didn't disrupt my household or put my mental health at risk. Olivia didn't take this well. She became upset and said I was being unsupportive and selfish. She argued that families should always help each other and that I had a moral obligation to let her stay, especially since she had nowhere else to go. She said that I was prioritizing my comfort over her needs and that it was unfair for me to turn her away when she was struggling. She even implied that our parents would be disappointed in me for not letting her move in. I tried to explain my perspective calmly. I said that my decision wasn't about refusing help altogether, but that I had to set boundaries to protect my home and my mental health. I reminded her that I had helped in the past, but the previous experiences had been very stressful and had negatively affected both of us. I emphasized that I was willing to support her in other ways, but I could not allow her to live in my house under the same conditions as before. She became increasingly angry, accusing me of abandoning her in her time of need. She said that I had made her feel like a burden and that I didn't care about her well-being. She started sending texts accusing me of being cold and unsympathetic, and she even mentioned that she might tell her family that I refused to help her. I felt hurt because I genuinely wanted to help her, but I couldn't compromise on boundaries that had proven necessary in the past. I also spoke with my parents about the situation. They understand my concerns, but are disappointed that I couldn't accommodate Olivia. They suggested I try to compromise, perhaps letting her stay for a very short period with strict rules. I considered this, but given my previous experiences and her tendency to ignore house rules, I felt it wasn't a sustainable solution. I worry that it would lead to arguments, stress, and resentment on both sides. Since telling her no, Olivia has been distant and passive-aggressive in family interactions. She has made comments about me being unsympathetic in group chats and has expressed frustration to mutual friends. I feel guilty because I do care about her, but I also know that giving in would create more problems than it would solve. I want to support her, but not at the expense of my stability, mental health, and the peace of my household. I've also tried to suggest alternative ways to help her, like providing temporary financial assistance for rent, helping with job applications, or connecting her with local support programs. She seems uninterested in these solutions and keeps insisting that living with me is the only viable option. I feel stuck because I'm trying to balance being a supportive sister with maintaining necessary boundaries, and she interprets my caution as cruelty. Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister move back into my house after she lost her job, even though she accused me of being unsupportive and selfish. Was I wrong to prioritize my own boundaries and mental health, or should family always take precedence, even when it leads to repeated stress and conflict? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.